they once imagined.
German prosecutors have opened an investigation into last month's deadly flooding that left almost 200 people dead. The probe will look at why warnings from the German Weather Service were not properly passed on to residents. From FSN's bureau in Berlin, Trent Murray has more.
Prosecutors said they would probe whether a case of negligent murder or negligent bodily harm could be brought against Jürgen Föhler, the elected leader for the region, for his district's failure to pass on evacuation orders to residents in the path of the deadly flooding. The disaster has raised questions about the effectiveness of Germany's flood warning system, with Angela Merkel saying an SMS-based system may be needed in the future.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the concerns of one official in Oklahoma, an American state dragging its feet over COVID-19 vaccinations and now experiencing a major spike in Delta variant infections as a result. Dr. Dale Bratzler is the University of Oklahoma's chief COVID officer. It's his job to prepare the university for a safe reopening in the autumn. But on Thursday, he told reporters that he now fears there are too many doctors in the state who are complicit in persuading its residents not to get vaccinated. He says in the last few weeks he has heard from a growing number of Oklahomans who say they won't get the jab because their own GP told them not to.
There are very, very few medical contraindications to the COVID vaccine. Way too many people are being told that they can't take the vaccine, and that's simply not the case. I've had people contact me and say I'm allergic to an antibiotic, so my doctor told me I can't get the vaccine. That's not true. There are no antibiotic cross-reactivities with the current vaccine.
He says there are only two reasons medically not to get jabbed: a big allergic reaction to a first dose of the vaccine or a known allergy to one of the components in the jabs. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's hospitals are filling up and officials fear the state is rapidly running out of intensive care unit beds. The main news again, more than 50% of Americans are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19, 8 months after the vaccination rollout began. The US economy added nearly 1 million new jobs in July. Welcome news for the White House. But in Afghanistan, the Taliban have, for the first time since the US troop withdrawal began, captured control of a provincial capital. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish a TV show where I travel across this great nation, eating pork in every one of our 50 states. Join me on my cross-country odyssey as I make our forefathers proud, reveling in life, liberty, and the pursuit of pork.
You can really taste the cooked pork. This stuff is fantastic. I'm a big salt fan.
Let's pork! We're tasting prime pork dishes in every state in the union, and I couldn't be more excited for this once-in-a-lifetime tour. You're going to be right here with me, seeing everything I do and watching every pork I taste. I'm Jim Haggerty. You know me as the host of Today Now, but I've also eaten in a ton of restaurants. Now I'm heading out on the road. My mission? Find the best pork our country has to offer.
Watch Jim Haggerty's Porkin' Across America at youtube.com/The Onion.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is the Friday night edition of Free Talk Live. We're the live radio call-in talk program where you can call in and talk about anything that's on your mind. The telephone number to do that, of course, is 603-283-6160. Again, 603-283-6160. Open phones. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the Reverend Captain Kickass. Joining me,
it's Bonnie.
And Chris.
So, wow, Friday already. This week just kind of flew by for me. I feel like I was just here yesterday, even though it's been, well, a week. Well, I was on Saturday as well. So, but yeah, I'm like, whoa, geez, I'm here already.
It feels more like a couple of weeks for me.
Yeah, me too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow,
well,
weird.
I mean, I think I haven't actually been here for a couple of weeks.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Somebody substituted for you the last 2 sessions. One of them was because we were having a shindig for Mr. Freeman. And then, of course, you allowed Tamsin to do Clamoring to do a guest spot for you. So we're glad to have you back. Welcome back. It has been 2 weeks for you.
Been too long.
Indeed. I didn't get the wear a T-shirt to work memo, so I'm not wearing the T-shirt, but okay, you guys are doing well. I like blank T-shirts, and, of course, the Bitcoin T-shirt is far out solid and right on in my book. I wanted to talk about first today, this just sort of came across the Twitter, and it says CNN has fired 3 employees for coming to work without being vaccinated.
Unjabbed.
So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff around this. For example, I know that some hospitals now and medical facilities are, quote, requiring, unquote, their staff to be vaccinated. The same staff, of course, that worked through, we'll call it the pandemic for lack of a better phrasing, that worked through all of the initial wave of this thing with no vaccine. So they were, in some people's eyes, working under the greatest of risk. And now, of course, these people face termination.
Yeah, I saw a sign a nurse was holding recently because at, I don't know, I think it's St. Louis, a hospital was starting to fire people for not getting vaccinated. And one of the nurses was holding a sign that said, "We worked through the pandemic and now they're going to fire us."
Right.
It's kind of interesting because if you're working in a hospital, I mean, what's the chance that you haven't already gotten infected? I mean, it seems like it's probably pretty low. I could be wrong, but it's also interesting that they're already requiring it because I was talking to somebody today who works at a hospital, and he was saying that it won't be until October that they require it. So
I'm sure they've put some sort of a time frame on it, but I thought it was interesting when this popped up that says Jeff Zucker says in a memo to staff that CNN has postponed the September 7th return to office date and is now targeting mid-October. And so CNN itself had said, hey, we don't, you don't need to start coming to the office or whatever. But then Jeff Zucker adds in his memo, this is from August 5th, to CNN staff, in the past week, we've been made aware of 3 employees who are coming to the office unvaccinated. All 3 have been terminated. Let me be clear, we have a zero-tolerance policy on this. Yeah, I know. I'm still flabbergasted. Since when did employers become masters of your personal medical health?
I mean, I have to wonder, how did they even know they were unvaccinated?
They probably asked. I'm guessing.
And then somebody said, I'm not vaccinated?
I mean, most people would be truthful about that, I would think.
Or maybe they asked for proof of vaccination.
Yeah, but that is a good question. How did they find out? Was it the employees who were they going around, we're
it's
here
kind of
unvaccinated?
It's kind of weird the way they phrased it because we found out. I mean, kind of suggesting that it wasn't was mandatory, but they weren't actually checking on it. And then they found out somebody wasn't vaccinated because they said something to a colleague or something.
Yeah, maybe they did make it mandatory. I don't know. If you have any further details and you're listening to this show right now, please give us a call at 603-283-6160 because there are way too many questions about why CNN would fire 3 employees who were coming to the office unvaccinated. But it's still, it's really bothersome. That would be I don't know, if I didn't have, mumps, measles, and rubella vaccination. Would they fire me for that too if I were an employee? What else would they, what kind of precedent does this set?
Yeah, before when you went to the doctor, before COVID, they would just say, are you up to date on your vaccinations? They wouldn't ask you for proof of it or anything, and your employer wouldn't ask you for proof of it. I'm not vaccinated.
And the crazy thing is if it's a visual thing, right? They want to send a message, wouldn't it be better not to verify, because if they verify, then they're going to have to fire people, and then it's going to become a publicity issue, and then others are going to know that, they don't have to get vaccinated. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It seems like counterproductive.
Yeah, and the job market as it sits right now is already messed up. There's way too many job openings and not enough people applying for them for a variety of reasons, including the fact that people are still getting highly paid by government money, if you want to call it money.
Is that still going on?
It's still going on. Yeah, the child tax credit thing kicked in. So now folks who have kids specifically are getting, I don't know, up to $300 a kid, something like that.
It's so disgusting. And I don't mean this specifically, just all these, we're going to steal less from you, right? Like, why can't they just not tax us in the first place?
Yeah, that's a good question. But this whole thing falls on the heels of we're now seeing Vaxports, right? Vaccination passports. New York City, of course, now has a thing where, if you don't have a vaccine passport, why, you can't travel and and there's a whole bunch of stuff you can't do. You can't go to concerts. You can't go to blah. You can't do this, can't do that. Can't go out in public.
Is that something that's happened in New Hampshire too, or did they do the opposite of that here?
Well, so I don't know about the vaccine passport specifically.
I thought they banned them, and I don't know what that. I didn't know what that. I didn't really know what that meant.
Sununu just said he has no plans to roll out a vaccine passport, which means nothing because last year he had no plans to lock down.
They put in something. I think it was another one of these. What are they called when the mayor just or the governor just signs a thing? Yeah, it's where it's not voted on. So I think he just wrote one of those that says they're not going to do lockdowns again or something like that.
Okay.
But I don't think it applies to the vaccine passports. So, and of course, if you watch, regular television, you wouldn't know much about this, but there have been protests, I'm going to say worldwide. I mean,
massive
protests about this very thing, about vaccine passports. There are areas that are reinstituting mask mandates, that are reinstituting lockdowns, not just of the world, but in the United States, too. These things are happening. California, too.
California as well?
Yep. In California, they are reinstituting mask mandates. And
even though they have
lockdowns.
The highest vaccination rates.
Yeah. And so, this coupled with the news of what they call breakthrough infections, this would be the Delta variant of COVID, that even if you've been vaccinated once or twice, depending on, whatever you decided to do, that you can now become a carrier of the Delta variant and spread it to everybody who is both vaccinated and unvaccinated.
Yeah, and it's just not a surprise because everybody knew that was going to happen because that's what coronaviruses do, aka the cold. Yep. That's why you can't get vaccinated once and just never get the cold again.
Right. So, of course, the vaccine didn't work. It's not effective against the variant, and now everybody who's vaccinated is potentially a super spreader. And now you can lose your job for a personal medical decision, apparently, at least if you work for CNN. 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live is coming up, the Friday night edition.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com.
On March 16th this year, government task forces violently raided the New Hampshire Bitcoin Embassy, the Mighty Moose Mart, the homes of Aria DiMezzo, Andy and Renee Spinella, Colleen Fordham, a grandmother, and perhaps most relevant, the studios of Free Talk Live. The Crypto Six were arrested. 4 were released on bail conditions, but Ian Freeman was held hostage for 69 days. Rich Paul, also known as Nobody, remains captive. We've consulted attorneys who say no crime even appears to have been committed. But that didn't stop the Joint Thug Task Force from ripping out wires from our broadcast stacks, taking Free Talk Live off the air, resulting in a violation of our and your First Amendment rights. You can visit thecrypto6.com to help, but as importantly, contact other media and tell them about this outrage. This case is likely to set precedent for cryptocurrency use well into your future. Help our fight for liberty and financial freedom at thecrypto6.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
And welcome back. It is the Friday night edition of Free Talk Live. The telephone number here in the studio, if you'd like to join in the conversation, is 603-283-6160. Again, 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
Last segment, we were talking about a tweet from Oliver Darcy, who apparently is somebody over at, is he a reporter? I'm not sure who he is, actually. But he says that Jeff Zucker had added a memo to CNN staff. In the past week, we've been made aware of 3 employees who are coming to the office unvaccinated. All 3 have been terminated. Let me be clear, we have a zero-tolerance policy on this. So this is the first employer that I'm aware of that has taken a stance on vaccines and said they have a zero-tolerance policy. Everybody who works for them must be vaccinated or they're going to get fired.
Even if you have like an allergy to these things.
I think zero tolerance means zero tolerance. It's pretty strong wording.
That definitely sounds, zero tolerance policies are just terrible all around.
Oh, yeah.
Because they never take it into account like, oh, there's a good reason for this or that under certain circumstances.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about schools or we're talking about vaccines or, it doesn't really matter. They're bad. Zero tolerance is a bad policy.
Well, now I realize that when it comes to employment, legally speaking anyway, in the United States at least, if most of the places are what they call at-will employment, which means you can leave whenever you want. You don't need an excuse. You just be like, hey, sorry, I'm out of here. Or they can also let you go at any time, and they just say, hey, sorry, you're out of here. And that's what at-will sort of boils down to for most people. So having said that, though, we're talking about people's careers, people's jobs, people's ability to earn here. And CNN is saying comply or get fired. So if you're already working for them, like I could see like on the way in, if going forward, if you're going to hire people, you're going to require them to be vaccinated, then you have the choice of whether or not to accept the job if you interview for that job, that kind of a thing. But we're talking about people who have already been hired prior to this new policy who aren't really being given that choice. I mean, they are, because they can quit or get fired if the employer finds out. But that's about as close to coercion, I think, as a corporation can come, without, sticking a gun in somebody's face or something like that. It's certainly imposing their opinion on their employees.
Their medical opinion, which is just crazy that CNN thinks that they can just be their own employees' doctors.
I've always had this conflict with like the idea of going to work for some corporation.
Yeah.
Just because it's like, these corporations do this terrible stuff and this is just one example, right?
Yeah.
All the time. And it's like at some point they're going to do something that's just immoral, and it's like, what do? You're basically forced to go along with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know. If you have the choice, I think most people do, but they don't make the choice at the right time, and then they get entangled in this system, and it's like at some point you just got to be like, no more, right?
Yeah, I have maintained that all of this nonsense surrounding this attempt at dividing people, the vaccinated, the unvaccinated, and to get the vaccinated people to sort of hate and shame the unvaccinated, when they really don't have any reason to, that it's going to get worse before it gets better. But the only way out of it, of course, is for everybody to not comply, right? And that includes the vaccinated people. Vaccinated people are going to have to...
How does a vaccinated person not comply, though?
Well, they have to stand up for other people's rights.
Okay.
That's the only thing I can think of, right? I've talked to many people, both vaccinated and unvaccinated, and most of the vaccinated people that I've talked to have said, yeah, I got it, but I certainly don't support forcing anybody else to get it. It's a medical decision.
If you believe that somebody should be forced to get the vaccine just because you got it, you should be totally okay with like states like Kentucky mandating that people can't get abortions because most of Kentucky doesn't think that that's okay.
And the crazy thing is, like, this isn't even, it's a lot of scaremongering, right? Like I could even see an argument where it's like, okay, everybody's going to die if everybody doesn't get vaccinated, basically. And then I'm like, all right, that kind of makes sense, like, at that point. But it's like, that's not even what's happening. It's like, it's the camouflage is being pulled over everybody's eyes, and they're making it out as if everybody's going to die if you don't get vaccinated. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, there's still more than a 99% chance that you're going to be just fine, even if you get it.
It really is, somebody is... I can't go there on air. But yeah,
it is a fear-mongering campaign. You are correct. It is being politicized specifically to scare people. Yeah. They are riling people up and getting them afraid of a thing that people have no business being afraid of. Look, the masks didn't work. The thing spread anyway. The vaccine didn't work. The thing mutated, and so now the vaccines themselves are irrelevant because of the Delta variant that mutated and is now able to be carried by vaccinated people and spread by vaccinated people. So all of the things, the lockdowns didn't work because it continued to spread, even though they took away everybody's rights and closed people's businesses and got, people lost their jobs, and they, hurt the economy tremendously that it's going to take years to recover from, of course, right? So none of the things that they did attempt to do, to sort of curb this thing, none of the things worked.
Yeah, this reminds me of, what is it, like mass hysteria? It's like it's all in our heads, and it's not in my head, but it's in like the majority. It seems like it's in the majority of people's heads. And I'm not against vaccination. I will probably get vaccinated at some point, like maybe October or something, but it won't be now because of the vaccines. And I'm not even sure that it matters whether or not I get vaccinated in October, because like you said, it just isn't going to matter. It just doesn't matter enough, right?
Yeah, I'm not against vaccination per se.
No, definitely not.
However, I don't feel like I need to get a vaccine because I had COVID.
Plus, it's different than a regular vaccine. Like, it's an mRNA test.
So hopefully in October or so, that's going to change, and there's going to be more traditional vaccines available for it as well.
That makes sense.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, right now, especially, the vaccine is not as thoroughly tested as most vaccines, and we're talking about traditional vaccines are. So it is something to be concerned about, I think.
I mean, if you look at all of the different varieties of coronavirus and how human beings have fared with coronavirus over the history of humankind, I will take my chances with Mother Nature. Thank you very much. Now, whatever your decision is out there in listener land, I'm fine with, as long as you don't force your opinions and your ideas on other people. Respect other people's individual decisions and figure out what's right for you and yours, and do that. And that's all there is to it. There's no need for government to be involved in any of this. There's no need for people to get fired over this. 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live on the way.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. More than 50% of Americans are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The threshold was passed earlier today, 8 months after the country's vaccination rollout began. But on a day that saw more than 100,000 new cases of COVID-19 for the first time since February, and 439 deaths. At the White House, President Biden repeated his plea to America's vaccine refuseniks to get the jab.
Today, about 400 people will die because of the Delta variant in this country. A tragedy, because virtually all of these deaths were preventable if people had gotten vaccinated.
And the president was also talking today about another bit of news. The U.S. economy added nearly 1 million new jobs in July. Welcome news for the White House. From FSN's Washington Bureau, Caroline Malone reports.
It brings the overall unemployment rate down 0.5% to 5.4%. President Biden touted his administration's policies for the positive trend.
Economic growth is the fastest in 40 years. Jobs are up. The unemployment rate is the lowest since the pandemic hit. Black unemployment is down as well because we put in place the necessary tools early in my presidency.
The The growth of jobs in July was largely due to the leisure and hospitality sectors, restaurants and bars, hotels and entertainment groups adding nearly half of all new jobs. During the worst of the coronavirus pandemic last year, the unemployment rate reached 14.8%, and there's a way to go before employment reaches pre-pandemic levels again. Caroline Malone in Washington.
In Afghanistan, the Taliban have, for the first time since the US troop withdrawal began, captured a provincial capital. The city of Zaranj in Nimroz province is now reportedly under Taliban control, with battles raging for other provincial capitals as well. Deborah Lyons is the UN's special envoy on Afghanistan.
The impression I have now is of a population waiting apprehensively for a dark shadow to pass over the bright futures they once imagined.
German prosecutors have opened an investigation into last month's deadly flooding that left almost 200 people dead. The probe will look at why warnings from the German Weather Service were not properly passed on to residents. From FSN's bureau in Berlin, Trent Murray has more.
Prosecutors said they would probe whether a case of negligent murder or negligent bodily harm could be brought against Jürgen Foehler, the elected leader for the region, for his district's failure to pass on evacuation orders to residents in the path of the deadly flooding. The disaster has raised questions about the effectiveness of Germany's flood warning system, with Angela Merkel saying an SMS-based system may be needed in the future.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
Hey, welcome back to the program, everybody. You are listening to Free Talk Live. The telephone number here is 603-283-6160. Again, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to join in the conversation tonight. The phones are open. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
I just thought of the best metal name ever. Well, I didn't just think of it. I thought of it at work the other day, but I just Googled to make sure that it hasn't been already used.
What is it?
And I think you're going to love it. It's Metal Tart. Instead of Pop Tart.
Wow. Yes. Would there also be Country Tart and Western Tart and Smooth Jazz Tart?
R&B Tart.
R&B Tart, yes. Rap Tart.
Rap Tart.
Oh my gosh, it's funny because Pop Tart, it literally is also music. That's pretty funny.
Hey, what do you call animated onions who sing rhymes?
I don't know.
Rapscallions.
Oh.
Scallions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is Free Talk Live. It is hard to believe that Bitcoin has only existed for a little more than a decade. That decade has seen some very remarkable developments for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency already. Bitcoin has proven to be an invaluable tool that is changing the world. Chances are you've heard about Bitcoin and maybe you've decided that it's finally time to learn about it. Bitcoin.com has everything you need for that, including some very short videos that only take a few minutes of your time to teach you the basics so that you can get involved with this groundbreaking technology. But even if you already know about Bitcoin, there's still something for you at Bitcoin.com. You can stay up to date on all the news that's relevant to you at news.bitcoin.com. There's something for everyone, from the novice to the expert, and it's all in a very sleek and easy-to-use modern website. Check it out. Visit Bitcoin.com. All right, so the previous two segments we were talking about CNN firing 3 people for coming to the office unvaccinated. The travesty. Like, you know.
All the people that were put in danger.
Yeah.
Of surviving.
Put in the point, less than 1% chance of having anything happen to them.
Oh man, this is like the longest running joke.
Like, I'm pretty sure that more people die by like accidental office injuries, like a pencil to the eye or
standing
something.
on a chair.
I would love to see those statistics now, just because you're probably right.
But whatever. So, and we had talked about a little bit in the previous segment how, the masks were useless, the lockdowns were useless, all of the measures they took, didn't stop the coronavirus. They didn't even really slow it down. There's no evidence to say that masks even slowed it down. It spread anyway. It's a coronavirus. People survived it. People got vaccinated, but then, of course, the virus mutated, et cetera, and so on. And so now everybody can get it again whether or not you've been vaccinated, and you can spread it whether or not you've been vaccinated, supposedly, according to all of the things that I've read recently. But I wanted to talk specifically about the lockdowns. Jeffrey Tucker has penned an article over at brownstone.org that says, "What were the lockdowners thinking?" He begins the article, "I've heard the following question seemingly thousands of times over the last year. Why did they do this to us?" It's still the burning question about lockdowns. The schools, businesses, and church closures, the banning of events, the stay-at-home orders, the travel restrictions, the wildly desperate central plan enforced by police to somehow keep people apart from each other. The failure to control or even mitigate pathogenic trajectory, even forgetting about the astonishing social costs, is by now indisputably obvious, at least to some of us. So what precisely was the intention of the lockdowns? To answer this question, I turn to the book Spike by Jeremy Farrar. He is not a well-known figure in the U.S., but in the UK, he's basically their Dr. Fauci. He wields huge institutional influence throughout the Wellcome Trust, controlling both opinion within the epidemiological profession and funding resources for research. He was probably the dominant influence for enacting the lockdowns in the UK, more so than Imperial College's Neil Ferguson. The book is a tell-all, day by day, from the time of dawning of awareness of the pathogen throughout the year. The book strikes me as forthcoming and all the more terrifying for it. It reveals much about his friends, associates, frustrations, debates, strategies, worries, internal drama, and intellectual orientation, which is overwhelmingly in favor of deploying massive state power to control the invisible enemy. I'm a very polite writer, but I cannot decline to admit my complete alarm at so deeply encountering the mind of a person who did what he did and thinks what he thinks. Once he became completely convinced of lockdownism, he went all in. Quote, "Social distancing measures should be mandatory, not optional," he writes. "A prime minister cannot ask people to lock down if they feel like it. That's not the way these sorts of public health measures work." I mean, if that's not the words of a dictator, I don't know what are.
And the thing is, like, it might even make sense in a situation where there was, like, I don't know, people actually dying, in significant numbers, but they're not. They're simply, it's not happening. It's just not happening. This is not, there have been real pandemics, and I don't want to say this isn't a pandemic. It technically is, but it's not a pandemic where people are dying in huge numbers. We've had that in the past. We've seen that. That's not what this is.
Yeah, I agree. And for people to have this type of mentality, saying that they should be mandatory, that, you're literally dictating. Literally, that's the definition of a dictator. When people do what you say, you are a dictator.
And I don't like the way he says a prime minister shouldn't do that. Like a leader, somebody that, knows better than the average person.
Somebody in power should be obeyed.
They should tell everybody what to do.
If people were dying left and right, you'd know it, and you wouldn't be going outside.
Yeah, it's been...
You don't need somebody telling you that.
It's been over a year, 18 months, something like that?
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was a very nice day here in Keene, New Hampshire today. As I drove around before coming to the studio today, saw lots of people. I didn't see anybody masked today. Nobody. I saw lots of people eating indoors and outdoors because it was such a nice day. There were crowds. The downtown people were shopping, going about their business. Like, if you didn't know anything about, from the news or whatever, or if you, were in a coma and you just woke up and decided to go for a walk today, you wouldn't know any of this was happening. And so...
Well, not in Keene anyway.
Yeah, not here.
Nobody wears masks into my work anymore, where I worked at a convenience store, and nobody wears masks into it anymore, and it used to be every single person.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So the article continues, those little bromides, this casual dismissing of all concerns that might have doubts about a medically informed totalitarian state, are strewn throughout. I personally cannot fathom the psyche of a person who imagines that his profession entitles him to control all human interactions by police force, with gendarmes prohibiting people from behaving completely normally and using violence against them for daring to engage with each other, opening their schools and businesses, and otherwise going about their lives peacefully, and genuinely believing that this is the best thing for society all told. I truly cannot fathom that. Few people can. As to the driving question of why, oddly, I finished this book without a consistent and clear answer. His thinking on the topic of lockdowns and their objective migrates from chapter to chapter. There's no clear objective other than to do something dramatic as a display of government power and willingness to act. That reminds me of, what's the movie I'm thinking of? We have to tell them why they need us. It's V for Vendetta.
Oh.
Yeah.
Never seen it.
Oh, what?
I just don't really watch movies.
Oh my gosh, you are missing out on one of the greatest movies of all time. It is a must-watch for any libertarian ilk. If you're an anarchist, a minarchist, just a rebel in general, if you believe that governments have done some awful things, V for Vendetta is a movie for you. 603-283-6160. More coming up.
Fact. The new NSA data center in Utah requires 1.7 million gallons of water every single day to operate. Billions of Fourth Amendment violations need massive computers and the water to cool them. That water is being supplied by the state of Utah. Fact. There's absolutely nothing in the Constitution which requires your state to help the feds violate your rights. Our message to Utah: turn it off. No water equals no NSA data center. Visit offnow.org.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Six 603-283-6160 is the phone number here at Free Talk Live. If you would like to, well, be heard, get your voice on the radio, talk about whatever is on your mind. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
We've been talking about an article by Jeffrey Tucker, who's essentially reviewing a book by the UK version of Dr. Fauci. His name is Jeremy Farrar, and he penned a book about the lockdowns. And Mr. Tucker is criticizing this person for basically having the mentality of a tyrant, and his own writing seems to suggest as much, saying that a prime minister needs to be obeyed. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially the vibe that he's putting off with his writing. Mr. Tucker continues to say that Farrar nowhere admits failure, of course, and predictably explains away all the problems with the claim that governments should have locked down more things at a much earlier date. So any problem, and this happens here too in the United States, right? Whenever there's a problem with any of this going on, they're like, well, it wouldn't have been that way if we'd have just locked down harder and locked down more, locked down earlier.
Yeah, and they can't say lockdown more anymore because we can now say Australia.
And how, just as a tangent, I'm glad that you brought up Australia because, oh my gosh, like there's got to be Australians right now that are just going, why did we give up our guns? I don't understand. We should never have given up our guns.
Oh, because there was that one incident in the 90s or something.
Yeah, and now all of a sudden Australia is becoming something evil, man. I don't know if you guys are paying attention to it. I've got a couple of...
So what happened in Australia exactly?
They have the military enforcing lockdowns currently.
Yes.
Like
military
you can only go
in
for...
the streets. Like, yeah. Martial law.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can go outside for like 4 specific things. That's it.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's winter there.
People are getting tossed in jail, and there's been protests and stuff, but they are few and far between.
Just get shut down, probably.
Yeah, it's heinous. It is. I am afraid that Australia is going to turn into the next sort of. Something's going to happen, right? You can't.
North Korea.
Nazi Germany. Something. I don't know. But like you cannot restrict people that badly for very long until something bad happens.
I think Stalin and Hitler both would disagree on you with that.
Well, I mean, something good from their perspective, but bad for people.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is, ultimately, open a history book, when these types of things happens, they usually don't end without people dying.
Yeah, that's kind of the point, right?
And
like people are going to die and bad stuff's going to happen.
And I hope it doesn't get that far. I really do.
But this
I don't
was all
advocate for that, but go ahead.
This is all to prevent one death.
If it only prevents one death, Bonnie, then it's all worth it, right?
Yep.
So if we kill other people and it prevents one death, it's worth it?
No. I'm being facetious, of course.
Earlier in the year, maybe like I don't know, June or May, I kept getting so annoyed because everybody who's a fan of Lady Gaga right now is upset that they haven't got to dance in a club to her newest album. I mean, there's probably some places where you can, and I'm sure in the United States it's happened now, but I'm just kind of out of the scene. But that's in at least like May, that's where everybody was at. And a video came out where Replay, the best song on the album, was being played in a club packed with people with lights, and everybody was dancing, and it looked awesome in Australia. And the narrative was, oh, Australia's so lucky. We suck in America. Nobody locked down. Nobody would comply, and so they get to have Lady Gaga in their clubs again, and we don't get to. And now look at them now.
Yeah, it's.
Cannot go to a club in Australia now.
I mean, you can't go anywhere in Australia, apparently, unless to the grocery store to get gas. I can't remember the other things that you're like. I guess you can go to the doctor, but you have to have an appointment and all that kind of stuff. And you have to let people know where you're going and when. I mean, you might as well be.
What does that even mean?
You might as well be on house arrest.
You have to text.
Let the government know that you're leaving your house?
Yep.
You still have to do that in Greece, too. You have to text them.
What? Wow.
That's like, I mean, like, Ian is supposedly like a criminal. That's what they're claiming, allegedly a criminal. And everybody in Australia is being treated the same way the United States is treating somebody who they think is a criminal.
Right. Yes.
Wow.
And, you know, like, they didn't have to build new facilities. They just made people's homes the prison.
Yeah, I mean, I keep pointing out that exact situation when it comes to Ian and how they just moved him from one cage to another. And now they're caging everybody in Australia and Greece, apparently. I guess.
Apparently they have like a rolling average every week of like less than 300, like 200 something cases. Yeah. There's 25 million people in Australia.
Death? That means like almost, one death?
I mean, it's... compared to other causes of death,
yeah,
it's not even worth mentioning. Like, people keep talking about Japan with the Olympics coming up, and like the amount of people, the amount of cases that they're having, and then like the number of deaths. And it's like, if you look at the population of Tokyo and then represent that number as a percentage of the population, it's really not even worth mentioning.
Yeah, it's less than 1%, and that's so it's not. I don't know what's
like 1/10 of 1%.
Right. So it's not even like one person dying, basically.
Yeah. Tokyo has an enormous population, right? So.
Yeah.
So at any rate, a terrible precedent has been set, and that is people have allowed governments to initially take away your liberties, your freedoms, freedom of movement, freedom of business, freedom to conduct transactions as you see fit with people that you see fit, all in the name of this medical, boogeyman. Now, I had corona. I know it exists. I'm not denying that corona doesn't, I'm not saying it's a fake thing.
But you never denied corona. You never denied it. From the beginning.
Right.
It's something you recognize. You're not one of the lunatics out there. You're actually one of the saner people that's talking about this on the air.
Right, but but other people would identify who haven't listened to this program or read anything that I've written or seen my social media. They wouldn't know that, and they would just automatically assume that I'm one of these. I'm an anti-vaxxer who doesn't believe conspiracy theories, and like, oh my gosh, go back and listen to the archives over at archives.freetalklive.com. You can hear all of our shows from the past year that talk about all of this and our opinions on it. So the precedent has been set that, government can take away your freedoms if they claim there's a medical emergency. And that is a horrible precedent, not just in the United States, worldwide. That's a horrible precedent, because now, once you give that away, once you give that up, once that precedent has been set that they can take away your freedoms because of something that they say is a medical emergency, now they're going to come up with all sorts of medical emergencies.
And now we can see that the bar for medical emergency is extremely low.
So
unbelievably low.
Super low death rate and scary videos from China that we now know were fake.
So, at any rate, Mr. Tucker is reviewing this Jeffrey Farrar, who's basically the UK equivalent of Anthony Fauci, saying his thinking on the topic of lockdowns and their objective migrates from chapter to chapter. He nowhere admits failures. All the problems, in his view, traced to not having institutioning his personal version of the totalitarian state earlier than was politically feasible. If you read this book, just keep in mind we're talking about the mental framework that would in any context otherwise be considered psychopathic, which you could also apply that to most politicians when it came to lockdowns. These governors and their lockdown mandates, the government at large supporting it, people even supporting that. Like, well, I think it's the best thing to do, so therefore you should do it too. No, if you support violating consent on any level, that makes you the a-hole.
If you supported lockdowns, all that means is you should have stayed home. Shouldn't have been able to let anybody else leave.
You don't put rock climbers, you don't lock them down in their houses because they're going to go out and possibly, have a larger risk than you are willing to take because they're going to go rock climbing. It just doesn't make any sense. You take whatever level of risk you're comfortable with and let everybody else do the same for themselves. And that's how you get freedom. 603-283-6160. Coming up, we'll talk about a police advertisement for employment, advertising qualified immunity as a benefit. More Free Talk Live is on the way.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always. Government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. More than 50% of Americans are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The threshold was passed earlier today, 8 months after the country's vaccination rollout began. But on a day that saw more than 100,000 new cases of COVID-19 for the first time since February, and 439 deaths. At the White House, President Biden repeated his plea to America's vaccine refuseniks to get the jab.
Today, about 400 people will die because of the Delta variant in this country. A tragedy, because virtually all of these deaths were preventable if people had gotten vaccinated.
And the president was also talking today about another bit of news. The U.S. economy added nearly 1 million new jobs in July. Welcome news for the White House. From FSN's Washington bureau, Caroline Malone reports.
It brings the overall unemployment rate down 0.5% to 5.4%. President Biden touted his administration's policies for the positive trend.
Economic growth is the fastest in 40 years. Jobs are up. The unemployment rate is the lowest since the pandemic hit. Black unemployment is down as well because we put in place the necessary tools early in my presidency.
The growth of jobs in July was largely due to the leisure and hospitality sectors. Restaurants and bars, hotels and entertainment groups adding nearly half of all new jobs. During the worst of the coronavirus pandemic last year, the unemployment rate reached 14.8%, and there's a way to go before employment reaches pre-pandemic levels again. Caroline Malone in Washington.
In Afghanistan, the Taliban have, for the first time since the U.S. troop withdrawal began, captured a provincial capital. The city of Zaranj in Nimroz province is now reportedly under Taliban control, with battles raging for other provincial capitals as well. Deborah Lyons is the UN's special envoy on Afghanistan.
The impression I have now is of a population waiting apprehensively for a dark shadow to pass over the bright futures they once imagined.
German prosecutors have opened an investigation into last month's deadly flooding that left almost 200 people dead. The probe will look at why warnings from the German Weather Service were not properly passed on to residents. From FSN's bureau in Berlin, Trent Murray has more.
Prosecutors said they would probe whether a case of negligent murder or negligent bodily harm could be brought against Jürgen Foehler, the elected leader for the region, for his district's failure to pass on evacuation orders to residents in the path of the deadly flooding. The disaster has raised questions about the effectiveness of Germany's flood warning system, with Angela Merkel saying an SMS-based system may be needed in the future.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the concerns of one official in Oklahoma, an American state dragging its feet over COVID-19 vaccinations and now experiencing a major spike in Delta variant infections as a result. Dr. Dale Bratzler is the University of Oklahoma's chief COVID officer. It's his job to prepare the university for a safe reopening in the autumn. But on Thursday, he told reporters that he now fears there are too many doctors in the state who are complicit in persuading its residents not to get vaccinated. He says in the last few weeks he has heard from a growing number of Oklahomans who say they won't get the jab because their own GP told them not to.
There are very, very few medical contraindications to the COVID vaccine. Way too many people are being told that they can't take the vaccine, and that's simply not the case. I've had people contact me and say I'm allergic to an antibiotic, so my doctor told me I can't get the vaccine. That's not true. There are no antibiotic cross-reactivities with the current vaccine.
He says there are only two reasons medically not to get jabbed: a big allergic reaction to a first dose of the vaccine or a known allergy to one of the components in the jabs. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's hospitals are filling up and officials fear the state is rapidly running out of intensive care unit beds. The main news again, more than 50% of Americans are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19, 8 months after the vaccination rollout began. The U.S. economy added nearly 1 million new jobs in July. Welcome news for the White House. But in Afghanistan, the Taliban have, for the first time since the U.S. troop withdrawal began, captured control of a provincial capital. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
It's The Onion Radio News. Teen sex is linked to alcohol and drugs by the Center for Figuring Out Really Obvious Things. This is Doyle Redland reporting. An exhaustive 4-year, $23 million study of substance abuse and sexual habits of more than 2,500 American teens has confirmed that young people between the ages of 13 and 18 who drink and or use drugs are more likely to be sexually active. Dr. Gerald Eckersley is director of the Boston-based organization.
We found that this phenomenon also occurs among adults as well as every population everywhere in the world that has ever existed since the dawn of time.
The center has sent a teleprompter-ready press release of its findings to more than 400 local TV news affiliates across the U.S., along with stock video footage of beer displays and teens smoking and drinking at parties. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
Welcome back to the Friday edition of Free Talk Live. TGIF.
I so want to say Free Talk Live, but
please don't, because I might be encouraged to cuss, and I don't want to dump myself. Again.
Is Free Talk Live still going on?
It's an occasional thing now. There's not like a. It's not like a schedule that's going to happen. It's going to be the first part of every month or whatever. It's not. It's just like when the occasion comes up, somebody will do an episode of Freer Talk Live.
So Freer Talk Live is the after show for those who don't know what I'm talking about. It's basically an uncensored version of Free Talk Live.
And if you've never seen or listened to an episode of Freer Talk Live, you can actually find that, I believe, on the YouTube channel for Free Talk Live itself, because most of that is archived there.
I know
it's not on the archives at freetalklive.com because it's a different show. It's not Free Talk Live, it's Freer Talk Live.
Yeah, it's like part of Free Talk Live, but it's a pseudo after show kind of deal.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun when it happens.
Yeah, it's like an online stream usually, and I don't know if there's. I didn't even know there were archives of the show.
Yes. In fact, I was looking at them earlier just to make sure we didn't sort of double cover any topics. I did want to tell folks out there in listener land about the Crypto 6, because they're preparing to take on the state with a prospective trial date sometime in May of 2022. They are preparing their defense of liberty and financial freedom against attempts by the state to take control of cryptocurrency. And this would set up the likes of Coinbase, Gemini, and Kraken as gatekeepers of cryptocurrency, and we don't feel like that should be allowed to happen. We must keep cryptocurrency away from the control of the federal government. It is the only way to keep them from continuing to drop bombs without consequence around the world, wreaking unbelievable devastation and destruction upon the innocent. Stand with us in our fight to put an end to war. Visit thecrypto6.com to learn about how you can join the fight to defund the war machine. We aren't backing down. Are you going to stand with us? Thecrypto6.com. And just sort of a side note here, looks like crypto is on the rise again.
Oh, really? What's it at?
BTC's back up over 40.
Oh, yeah. I already knew that. And, it's like a week old news now.
Has it been a week? Well, yeah, because it dropped back below 40. It came up to 40, and then it dropped back below. It got down to like 38 again or something. It was back up over 40, I think, this morning, maybe last night. But, that's causing a ripple effect across cryptocurrency. I think basically everything is up. And Ethereum, of course, just went through their mutation from proof of stake to proof of work, and so that's been done, and apparently seamlessly. So there's lots of good news around cryptocurrency, and as we said previously, news.bitcoin.com. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
If you want to join us, the telephone number is 603-283-6160. We're going to talk about some other things. I wanted to spend just a little bit more time on this article by Jeffrey Tucker from the brownstone.org or brownstone.org, where he has read this book by the UK equivalent of Dr. Fauci. His name is Jeffrey Farrar. And so he continues, how precisely lockdowns fix anything is never clear. Consider that when the US and the UK were locking down, vaccines were not really on the horizon. Fauci himself said they would never be necessary. Farrar reveals that he never believed that lockdowns alone would really work, and claims now to believe that the whole purpose was just to wait for a vaccine. So he's saying in retrospect, right? He didn't say the reason we're locking down is so we can wait for a vaccine, because they weren't even on the horizon.
Yeah.
He's saying this in retrospect now. He's like, oh, well, he didn't know at the time.
You know, this is kind of interesting because I was speculating way back when they said, when the first time they said 2 weeks, that it wasn't going to be 2 weeks. It was going to be a year or more at least.
When they were saying 2 weeks, if you, again, freetalklive.com, go to the archive section.
Definitely check the archives out.
When they said 2 weeks, the first night that they said it, I was on air, I believe. If not the first night I was on air after they said it, I was like, you guys realize this ain't going to be 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
You know,
it's like they're lying to our faces.
Nothing is more permanent than a temporary government program.
Yeah.
Patriot Act, anyone?
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was supposed to be temporary.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, what did you think was going to happen in over a 2 week period, right? Like it wasn't, there's no way you were going to have a complete lockdown. We didn't. And even if a complete lockdown would have worked, you will never achieve a complete lockdown. So there's no way it was going to be 2 weeks, which means it was going to be a year or more until there was a vaccine. And then who knows? Because even when you have a vaccine, it may not work. And vaccines they take time to develop. And, you know, it just, you don't get a vaccine in a year, basically.
If they somehow could have made it to where absolutely no one could leave their house for 2 weeks, I bet people would have died.
Well, sure, and that's why
die.
That's why lockdowns don't work, and they will never work, because you cannot lock people down to that degree, because then you have people dying for other reasons.
Yeah.
You know, like not having food or not having water, or, you know, I mean, what happens if your water breaks, or what happens if the street, main, water breaks? If nobody can go out, nobody can fix it, and if nobody can fix it, then people die.
I can't pinpoint, like, did anybody die specifically in that first 2 weeks of
no, because it wasn't
lockdown,
a complete
unquote.
lockdown.
But even with whatever, lockdown occurred, people committed suicide. People died of loneliness.
Well, that's true,
right? Because people just gave up, especially the elderly.
They sort of caused or contributed to the deaths.
There were people that committed suicide who said that it was because, I can't see my friends anymore.
Right.
So,
can't see my family.
Mm-hmm.
Can't visit grandma in the hospital. Whatever it is.
Yeah. Can't get the therapy they need.
So this goes on to say, lockdowns alone cannot get a society back to normality. As I never tire of saying, they do not change the fundamentals of a virus or a pandemic. Staying indoors does not alter a pathogen's transmissibility or ability to wreak harm. It just takes susceptible people out of circulation. When a lockdown ends, those people go back into circulation again. Without a vaccine or other measures in place, untying restrictions increases social contacts and transmissions rise. If restrictions eased and R shot up to 3 again, we would find ourselves back to square one, with an epidemic racing exponentially out of control, as it did in late March 2020. Science, vaccine, drugs, testing was the only exit strategy, according to Mr. Farrar. And as you were saying, Chris, Jeffrey Tucker asks, did you really believe that it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve?
No.
I know I didn't. The people who pushed lockdowns on governments around the world did not believe that. It was marketing and nothing more. For Farrar, lockdown is a more infallible doctrine than a testable strategy of viable disease mitigation. For him, lockdowns are really just a way for governments to do something in the face of a pandemic. So all these bastards, these politicians, they were just concerned about whether or not they looked good.
Yeah, honestly, it's a good thing they failed with the lockdowns, because we would have all starved to death had they succeeded. I mean, that's literally what would have happened if they actually could successfully, force everybody to lock down.
I mean, Cuomo obviously only cared if he looked good. He forced people who had COVID into nursing homes.
To die.
Yep. The most susceptible people, the old people that were in these nursing homes, had to live with these people that had COVID, and they knew they had COVID.
There was a time when people wouldn't tolerate that from anybody. You know what I mean? Like, people would have found a way to sort of rid themselves of that person.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I know even under the Nazis, they stopped terminating old people.
Yeah.
Well, instead,
because there was uproar,
Cuomo got an Emmy for his COVID coverage on daytime news.
For his acting. An Emmy award is for acting. He was acting.
acting like a good person.
Oh, what is wrong with people? And more to the point of the question is, what are people doing about it other than complying? And we sit here and we broadcast nightly, 7 nights a week. We talk about all this stuff, but it seems like it's falling on deaf ears. 603-283-6160. More Free Talk Live is next.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Yes, come on and listen to Free Talk Live. Yeah, you can dial 603-283-6160. Again, 603-283-6160. Phones are open. We're here 7 nights a week. You can take control of the airwaves, talk about whatever's on your mind. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the Reverend Captain Kickass. Joining me,
it's Bonnie.
And Chris.
And I wanted to tell you guys about Odyssey. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY, that's LBRY, for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odyssey, a video sharing and streaming website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. So as big tech, is canceling people because they don't like what they have to say or their content, why you do have an option. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com. And then every video that you watch, you'll then help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you to visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. Video.freetalklive.com. It's a pretty unique service, and we like those guys. So we're in the midst of talking about this article by Jeffrey Tucker from brownstone.org, talking about Mr. Farrar, who's basically the Anthony Fauci of the UK, and reviewing his writings on the matter. Apparently he wrote a book on, the whole, we'll call it the pandemic, the lockdowns, etc., and so on. And so Mr. Tucker continues, who could object? Many people and the author purport to understand this. Quote, we cannot begin to comprehend the anguish of a leader who is deciding whether to shut down his or her country, he says.
Oh, my goodness.
But the later the action, the more lives will be lost and the more disruption to all sectors of society.
What about the anguish of a business owner who has to shut down his business for nothing?
Schools, businesses, leisure, transport, governments are eventually forced to act because they cannot simply stand by and watch their health systems collapse. That's a quote. This language that governments are forced to act, how so? Mr. Tucker asks. They've never been so forced before. What was different about 2020 versus 2013, 2009, 1968, 1957, 1942, 1929, and so on, and so on, and so on.
Wait, what are those dates?
It can't be severity as such. We are still waiting on data to confirm that relative to pandemics past. Those dates are all from pandemics past, where nothing of the like happened. No lockdowns, no, forced vaccinations, no masking, right? Everything was voluntary, whatever you did. In fact, you can find some advertisements during, I'm trying to remember which one it was. It was during the black and white era of television and print and all that kind of stuff, maybe the 50s or 60s, where it's just like an ad in a newspaper. It's like, yeah, wash your hands, Be extra diligent about being clean, that kind of stuff. So there is no one measure of severity as such. It depends on the place and the demographic and immunological map. Lockdowns pertain to everyone, everywhere, regardless. No, this was about implementing an experiment based on modeling, which we know that model was wrong now. That's me speaking. Governments were forced to follow the advice of the architects. So the idea that government was forced to do anything is laughable.
That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like, the government has the ultimate power. How can the government be forced? And if the government didn't have the ultimate power, then that would make sense, but then it wouldn't be government.
And it's not some kind of disease where people were dropping in the street. Maybe then they could say our hand was forced,
It's such a farce.
When you have the power, you also have the power to not do anything, and that might even mean people die.
Mr. Tucker continues to say, sorry, but this is futile and deeply dangerous. Even with great vaccines that strike down every conceivable variant, this path would condemn a substantial portion of the world's population to a permanent state of immunological naivety and introduce the single biggest and most deadly threat we could ever face, potentially more of a killer than nuclear war. Think of all the native peoples in the U.S. who died of smallpox after Westerners brought the pathogen with them. At least 30% of the population died in the first round of death, and another third later. The reason was the absence of an immunological wall, and it strikes me that Farrar would risk repeating the disaster with his push for zero exposure.
Going back kind of to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show about employers saying people have to get fired if they don't get the vaccination.
Yeah.
I saw a number recently. Don't really know if I can trust any of these numbers. Like, I don't care if it came from CNN. I don't necessarily just trust it blindly, but it said that 72% of black people in the United States of America have not gotten vaccinated. And at this point, I would say that that is a choice. Like, I don't think there's that many places that don't have access to it. They're trying to get people to take it everywhere. It's free. And I just want to say it's crazy to think that you would want to, you know, exclude 72% of the black people of the United States from coming to your business or leaving the house.
Yeah, I can't imagine any
for a
business,
choice they're making.
I can't imagine any business wanting to, well, first of all, the businesses that were able to scrape by and somehow remain open, right, during the lockdowns, the people who were patronizing these businesses, giving them, you know, their money, are largely the people who are unvaccinated, right? And so now, like, if you're a business and you support mandated vaccines in any way, shape, or form, then you're actually just sort of like giving a middle finger to the people who supported your business when you almost went out of business because the government locked you down.
Yep.
It's insane. The insanity that has taken over almost every area, not only of the United States, but other countries as well, is just alarming on a level that I have never seen. Anyway, Mr. Tucker concludes with, reading this book, then, is a strange encounter with a new ideology and new statist vision, one that poses a fundamental threat, as disorienting and confusing as a new virus, unbeknownst to, as the new virus. Unbeknownst to most of us, lockdownism is an ideology, as a replacement for traditional law and liberty had been growing and consolidating its influence for at least a decade and a half before it was deployed on the world in the shock and awe of 2020. Defenders of freedom need to know, if they don't know already, here is another enemy, and its defeat will only come with honest and precise intellectual engagement. 603-283-6160. Coming up, we'll talk about that police department advertising qualified immunity as a benefit.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. More than 50% of Americans are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The threshold was passed earlier today, 8 months after the country's vaccination rollout began. But on a day that saw more than 100,000 new cases of COVID-19 for the first time since February, and 439 deaths. At the White House, President Biden repeated his plea to America's vaccine refuseniks to get the jab.
today, about 400 people will die because of the Delta variant in this country. A tragedy, because virtually all of these deaths were preventable if people had gotten vaccinated.
And the president was also talking today about another bit of news. The US economy added nearly 1 million new jobs in July. Welcome news for the White House. From FSN's Washington bureau, Caroline Malone reports.
It brings the overall unemployment rate down 0.5% to 5.4%. President Biden touted his administration's policies for the positive trend.
Economic growth is the fastest in 40 years. Jobs are up. The unemployment rate is the lowest since the pandemic hit. Black unemployment is down as well because we put in place the necessary tools early in my presidency.
The growth of jobs in July was largely due to the leisure and hospitality sectors, restaurants and bars, hotels and entertainment groups adding nearly half of all new jobs. During the worst of the coronavirus pandemic last year, the unemployment rate reached 14.8%, and there's a way to go before employment reaches pre-pandemic levels again. Caroline Malone in Washington.
In Afghanistan, the Taliban have, for the first time since the US troop withdrawal began, captured a provincial capital. The city of Zaranj in Nimroz province is now reportedly under Taliban control, with battles raging for other provincial capitals as well. Deborah Lyons is the UN's special envoy on Afghanistan.
The impression I have now is of a population waiting apprehensively for a dark shadow to pass over the bright futures they once imagined.
German prosecutors have opened an investigation into last month's deadly flooding that left almost 200 people dead. The probe will look at why warnings from the German Weather Service were not properly passed on to residents. From FSN's bureau in Berlin, Trent Murray has more.
Prosecutors said they would probe whether a case of negligent murder or negligent bodily harm could be brought against Jürgen Foehler, the elected leader for the region, for his district's failure to pass on evacuation orders to residents in the path of the deadly flooding. The disaster has raised questions about the effectiveness of Germany's flood warning system, with Angela Merkel saying an SMS-based system may be needed in the future.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. It is Free Talk Live, the Friday night edition. 603-283-6160 is the telephone number if you'd like to join us. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the Reverend Captain Kickass. Joining me,
it's Bonnie.
And Chris.
I just want to make a small correction. I said BTC, Bitcoin, was around 40,000. I wasn't far off. It apparently is at 42.8 right now, 42,800. Thanks, Bonnie, for the correction.
Are you really going to apologize for that correction when it changes, and it could have changed from the time that you said it until now?
I was just noting.
I just did.
But it changes so
yes.
much, so
yes,
often.
I am.
I was just noting because I saw it in my own wallet on my phone, and I was like, wow.
I was incorrect, and so now I'm not.
But were you? I mean, it's literally been
Hey, I thought I was wrong once.
an hour.
I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. All right, so now this story has already been corrected since it was originally published. Speaking of corrections, this is from thehill.com, and thanks, Bonnie, for bringing this in. I had read this. It was in my show prep as well, and we just made sure that it hadn't been covered already. I checked show notes from the past week or so, and it doesn't look like it, but this is out of New Hampshire, of all places. In Manchester, the Manchester Police Department advertised qualified immunity as a benefit.
Okay, Manchester, murder is not okay even if you become part of government. Okay?
Now,
imagine who they're drawing to apply there by advertising qualified immunity as a
Right. You want to beat somebody and get away with it?
qualified immunity.
You want to kill somebody and get away with it?
That's not okay.
Qualified immunity.
And here's the thing: qualified immunity is supposed to relate, if I'm not mistaken, to the job. If you go and murder somebody, that's not part of your job. So you shouldn't even get the qualified immunity in that case. So advertising it as a benefit of the job is very misleading.
It's really gross, honestly.
So
it is. It's disgusting.
We'll get to the article and we'll read the whole thing, but the sentence in question here, that was posted, reads, and I quote, "The department offers many opportunities to advance and additional unique benefits, including qualified immunity." That's the entire. There's a period there.
I mean, it literally sounds like something that might be in the description if like the mob, the mafia, right, were like to advertise a position, right?
Right,
Like
yeah.
that's exactly what it sounds like. It really is, isn't it?
I mean, we know that basically the state is a gang.
It is.
Right? They're just, somehow endorsed. Right? They're the official gang.
They're the biggest gang in town is what they are.
By far, by a long shot. So let's get into this a little bit. This is from thehill.com. New Hampshire police chief now apologizes for job post listing qualified immunity as a benefit. The New Hampshire police chief on Wednesday. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say, if you live in Manchester, you should feel really unsafe with your police officers just after that.
Yeah, I've got some experience with that one.
Yep.
Manchester is not the place to get arrested, I can assure you guys.
A New Hampshire police chief on Wednesday issued a public apology after his police department wrote a recruitment post that touted qualified immunity as a job benefit. And I've already read the sentence. I'll read it again. The department offers many opportunities to advance and additional unique benefits, including qualified immunity. The Facebook post read.
I mean, how do you even react to that? It's like
the only way you can, and that's with outrage, with
outrageous,
a disdain for police themselves, a disdain for the state, a disdain for an organization that literally exists in violation of consent.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally them saying you don't have to obey the law if you come and work for us.
It's literally what it's saying, yes.
It's literally them saying to the public, if you come work for us, you can hurt other people and not get in trouble.
That's exactly what qualified immunity is about. That's the crazy thing. But there is supposed to be this it's supposed to be restricted to your job duties, right? If you accidentally kill somebody on the job while doing your job, not, you get to go out and kill people on the side because, I don't know, you don't want to pay your landlord back or whatever
on the
for rent.
Side, right, yeah.
Right? No, that's not part of the job.
So a Twitter user named Isaac Schur, I don't know who he is or how he's related to this, posted, a police department in New Hampshire is hiring, and it's delighted to offer such unique benefits as qualified immunity. And now here's the actual ad. You ready? The Manchester Police Department is looking for reliable, motivated, and personable recruits for both entry-level and certified positions. Located less than an hour from Boston, Manchester enjoys proximity to great schools and attractions, the beach, and the White Mountains. The department offers many opportunities to advance and additional unique benefits, including qualified immunity. Click the link to apply now. There's no application fee, and remote testing is now available. Come enjoy the high quality of life in New Hampshire that New Hampshire offers, and work for a great department backed by community support.
Who thought that was a good idea?
I think as much as we protest in Manchester against the police there, pretty sure you're not going to have the community support.
Yeah, you're going to get Joa from Breaking the Law walking up to you while you're sitting in your car, asking you questions that are going to be uncomfortable for you.
Oh, yeah. And it's not just Joa. I mean, it's like you try to do a DUI checkpoint, you're going to have protesters out there, basically, fighting you every opportunity we get. You'll have people literally coming from out of the town, out of the city, from all over New Hampshire, coming to basically try and fight you off because you're basically abusing people.
Yeah, the spirit of live free or die is certainly alive in the state of New Hampshire. I wish it were larger. I wish more folks who
it's growing,
who also have the live free or die spirit would move to New Hampshire and join us.
We just got 4 new people today, actually,
That's
that moved
true.
to town. So
that's true. I'm sorry I missed that gathering. I've been doing some other stuff, but I'm glad to hear that we had some folks at the weekly dinner that we have. 4 new people is
4.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
One
Hear
day,
it.
just one day, 4 new people.
Keen, great.
Yes. So going back to this Manchester police touting qualified immunity as a benefit. Like, there's so many other, we'll call them benefits, right? That, regular job benefits that, like, you get as a police, medical, dental, 401k, retirement, right? All that kind of stuff, right? That are way better than, say, the average job, right? Because it's a state job, right? Particularly the retirement, right? I can't imagine why anybody looking through unless whoever wrote this didn't understand what qualified immunity meant.
Right? I feel like it was somebody who was like, yeah, we get this, and they like having it, so they were bragging.
I think Manchester police are whoever wrote this knew exactly what they were doing, because literally they use qualified immunity all the time.
Yeah.
They're constantly being sued, and they're constantly bringing qualified immunity up in the courts when they get sued. Today?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go on.
No, not about the Manchester police, but today somebody came into the Mighty Moose Mart where I work, and our friend, I won't say who's very vocal, was in there with me talking to me, and the guy that was the customer, he's wearing a shirt, and it said, like, some kind of construction worker or construction business, and he said, "Is this your business?" And he was like, "Oh, actually, it's my dad's business, and I used to work for them, but now I work for the jail." And it was just silent in there for a second because it was just me, our friend, and this guy. And he just went, "Oh, so you used to have an honest living." I couldn't believe he said that.
That's awesome.
But the guy just kind of laughed, and he was like, "Well, I needed retirement, and I have a lot better benefits now." So we just kind of shamed him with our, like, awkward silence.
Well, the next time you see him, you can say that, hey, I hear qualified immunity is a benefit of becoming a Manchester cop.
Yeah, right?
603-283-6160. Is qualified immunity a benefit? More coming up.
Do you ever say, "I could care less," when you really mean the opposite? You mean to say, "I couldn't care less." It's a common mistake. You are judged by how you speak, especially if you're looking for work, with so many more applicants than openings now. But even if you're not, avoiding common misstatements will help you make the most of the dozens of conversations and transactions that crowd your daily routine. So whatever you say, don't say "whatever" as a single-word sentence. It's the most annoying expression in the American English language, according to a recent poll. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. But seriously, at the end of the day, you'll want to avoid this scenario, sounding like everyone else. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
There are basically 2 types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Free Talk Live.
3-year-old child lost his arm after being viciously attacked by a pit bull terrier earlier this month.
Gosh.
Now the incident has moved a state lawmaker to author legislation that will effectively ban the pit bull breed in the entire state of Oklahoma.
Wow. Wouldn't all of Mr. Wesselhoff's constituents be a little safer if we all just couldn't have any dogs at all?
That's true. It would guarantee that no one would be bitten by dogs.
Right, and no
What
cats.
about cats? They scratch people.
They do scratch people, and it leaves a nasty infection.
It could, certainly.
Certainly.
We should ban infections, too, while we're at it. I mean, while we're protecting everyone from everything.
Birds can carry the flu, we know that.
You know, we should just exterminate all animals with teeth.
Well, forget the teeth. The birds have no teeth. I say we kill them all.
Just every animal out there. What about insects? You could just sign a law that bans mosquitoes.
That'd be great.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Welcome back to Free Talk Live. It is the Friday night edition. The telephone number is 603-283-6160. We'll get to your calls and thoughts in a minute. In the studio tonight, I am your host, the Lord Reverend Dr. Captain Kickass. Joining me,
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
I had to struggle to remember all those titles. I think I said them out of the normal order.
I'm like, did we add a title there?
Usually I do that once a show. I try to put all the titles in there.
Oh, okay.
And I got them out of order, I think.
The Reverend I'm used to hearing, but the doctor, adding doctor to your title is...
It's an honorary doctorate. I got it from a caller, right? And so I'm just assuming it's legit.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
He's a doctorate of yoga practitioner.
I went to school at U of Hell. My favorite course was Kill and Tell. I graduated head of class. I majored in kicking ass. I did hard time to get my master. I wrote the book of personal disaster, but I don't need a PhD to be a doctor of frickin' misery.
What the heck is that?
That's a lyric from Suicidal Tendencies.
that is,
yeah. And also
hardcore.
They don't
entertaining.
They don't use the word frickin' either. So just
frickin'.
Yeah. I just had to, so I didn't have to dump myself. One of my least favorite things to do. Let's go to your calls and thoughts. We have Jet calling from planet Earth. Jet, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I got 3 quick points about this thing we call mandates.
Okay, go ahead.
Number 1, any alteration of employment contract conditions is a breach of contract. I don't know why people are not bringing it up and suing these people left and right.
I feel like this is forthcoming. I know, I think last week, Friday, we talked about, maybe it was Saturday, we talked about some union who is saying, no, we actually refuse to have this, in place for our employees to, get mandatory vaccines. So I feel like lawsuits are coming, but you're right. It isn't talked about as much as it should be.
Well, I mean, wouldn't that depend on the contract, though?
Well, yeah, if the contract says we get to do anything to you, but I've never seen one of those.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that the contract though would give the employer in most cases give the employer an out to fire if they violate rules or policies, new or otherwise, and you effectively agree to any changes.
Yeah, in Texas, I know it's a work at will state, which means basically what Captain was saying earlier. They can fire you for any reason, just because they feel like it.
Well, that's topic number 2. And topic number 2 is if one medical procedure can be mandated for continued employment, then any medical procedure can be.
True.
Yeah, what a horrible precedent to set.
Well, that's not
sterilization, transplants, whatever you want.
Sure, but the thing is, I mean, at the end of the day, you're not, as long as you're not being forced to work for, a given employer, you do have the option of opting out. Assuming it's not mandated by law.
Yeah, Jet,
all employers.
You're a bit of a wordsmith. I refrained from using the word coercion in the context of an employer, requiring a vaccine. But is there some truth to that?
How about duress? Under duress.
Yeah.
Duress, threat, and coercion.
Yeah, I mean, but duress is, I guess the problem is that duress is not necessarily illegal. I mean, we are caused duress all the time, right? I mean, there's all sorts of things. The guy who steps on his, his not his maybe his gas even, but his brake, a little too much, too fast, can also cause you duress, right?
Oh, you mean distress?
Yeah.
Well, it says here the definition. It sounds like Jet is right, because it says threats, violence, constraints, or other action brought to bear on someone to do something against their will or better judgment. So
yeah, I mean, aren't they then forcing me to press on my brake if they press on their brake?
Oh, I thought you were saying. Never mind.
It doesn't have to be that great. It really doesn't have to be that great. The idea that if I say to you, well, now you're going to have to stand on your head and spin, quack like a duck, or you don't get to do whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. You don't get to change the deal. But let me do number 3 real quick.
All right, go ahead.
And that is, people with titles are just other humans that have no more magic powers than you or I do. So they have no right to make mandates anyway, because they're just people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Jet. We appreciate the call, of course.
I think this is more of a moral thing than it is more of a legal one, right? Like just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I tend to think that employers probably can mandate, but you have an option not to comply, and then of course you no longer work for the employer, presumably. But that doesn't necessarily mean they should, right?
Well, I mean, anybody can write words down on a piece of paper and put them in front of another person,
right?
That kind of a thing. But there's a couple of things to consider, and I think that there are going to be lawsuits. I think that there's going to be some lawsuits involving unions, like we talked about just a minute ago. But there's going to be a boatload of individual lawsuits, not only against these employers, but also against all of the government institutions.
I mean, what would the lawsuit say? I mean, what are you suing over exactly? Like, is there some legal obligation for them to?
I think
mandate employees.
I think
or
I want
vaccines or something. Or
I want to mention HIPAA at this point.
Yeah, but HIPAA doesn't usually apply in those circumstances.
What about disabilities? Like people who, have an allergy to any vaccine that they've gotten before should not be forced to get this experimental vaccine.
Medical privacy has always been a sticking point for employers. Employers have even advertised things where they're like, your medical privacy is a priority for us, right? And employers aren't supposed to be allowed to base their employment decisions on your medical status, right? If you have a disability of some sort, whether it's visible physically
ADA,
or not.
ADA, probably. It's something to do with the American Disabilities Act, probably.
Right.
Yeah, that's not the same thing as HIPAA. Those are two different acts. So maybe, but I don't know. It sounds like it might be a bit of a stretch, at least under HIPAA. Maybe under ADA, there's some sort of argument.
It's never been it's never been a legal thing in the time that I've been alive where an employer can discriminate against you because of a medical decision or condition.
Yeah, is it a condition? I mean, I don't know. Is it?
Well, it's still a choice, right? Like,
yeah.
In the same way, in many states, abortion is a choice, right?
Yep.
If an employer was suddenly able to see a record of how many abortions you may or may not have had, right, and base your hiring decision upon that,
yeah,
that seems like it shouldn't be a thing to me. Right. The same thing goes for vaccinations. So, in other words, if an employer can now keep track of who has and hasn't had this particular medical procedure, where does it end?
Yeah, I mean, this comes down. It sounds like it comes down to a moral dilemma, and people should be standing up against it. But I don't necessarily know that there is a legal case. I'm very curious. A lot of the people who are trying to claim legal stuff seem to be referencing HIPAA, but that probably doesn't apply. There might be something else.
I'm not a lawyer, but I imagine that. I mean, you've heard the term ambulance chaser.
Yeah.
Right? I imagine that there's some lawyers out there right now sort of frothing at the mouth, waiting to sue some people for this type of a thing.
So, and here's the other thing. You can sue over anything you want. It's just going to get thrown out if it's not something that you are allowed to sue under the law. If the law doesn't authorize the suit, then it will get thrown out before you actually get a trial.
Well, if people start getting injured off of this, I assume... I mean, I don't know. I think you might be right. There might be nobody to sue because they can't sue the vaccine companies.
Right. So the only person they could sue in this instance is an employer who they felt they had to get the vaccine because the employer mandated it. And so now they've suffered some ill effect, which we've already seen. We've already seen. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. If you could argue it's an injury of the job, then you might be. It's interesting then if that's the case, assuming that held, it's probably not the employer, but the employer's insurance that would have to pay out.
Right. So now we're looking at, huge liability for the insurers.
Yeah, like maybe, some sort of insurer.
And not to mention bad press for the employers.
Yeah, maybe.
Right? So, I mean, if you're a company and you want to be in good standing with your community and that type of thing, even within your industry, right, you want to make sure that you're not getting the bad press. So, I mean, a lot of these things can play into that. But you are right, Chris. It is going to take both vaccinated and unvaccinated people standing up for each other, standing up for medical privacy before this ends. That's just the only way out.
Yeah.
The only way I can see it ending. Otherwise, I mean, read a history book. It's going to end poorly. 603-283-6160. Hour number 3 of Free Talk Live is coming up next.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. More than 50% of Americans are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The threshold was passed earlier today, 8 months after the country's vaccination rollout began. But on a day that saw more than 100,000 new cases of COVID-19 for the first time since February, and 439 deaths. At the White House, President Biden repeated his plea to America's vaccine refuseniks to get the jab.
Today, about 400 people will die because of the Delta variant in this country. A tragedy, because virtually all of these deaths were preventable if people had gotten vaccinated.
And the president was also talking today about another bit of news. The U.S. economy added nearly 1 million new jobs in July. Welcome news for the White House. From FSN's Washington Bureau, Caroline Malone reports.
It brings the overall unemployment rate down 0.5% to 5.4%. President Biden touted his administration's policies for the positive trend.
Economic growth is the fastest in 40 years. Jobs are up. The unemployment rate is the lowest since the pandemic hit. Black unemployment is down as well because we put in place the necessary tools early in my presidency.
The growth of jobs in July was largely due to the leisure and hospitality sectors. Restaurants and bars, hotels and entertainment groups adding nearly half of all new jobs. During the worst of the coronavirus pandemic last year, the unemployment rate reached 14.8%, and there's a way to go before employment reaches pre-pandemic levels again. Caroline Malone in Washington.
In Afghanistan, the Taliban have, for the first time since the U.S. troop withdrawal began, captured a provincial capital. The city of Zaranj in Nimroz province is now reportedly under Taliban control, with battles raging for other provincial capitals as well. Deborah Lyons is the UN's special envoy on Afghanistan.
The impression I have now is of a population waiting apprehensively for a dark shadow to pass over the bright futures they once imagined.
German prosecutors have opened an investigation into last month's deadly flooding that left almost 200 people dead. The probe will look at why warnings from the German Weather Service were not properly passed on to residents. From FSN's bureau in Berlin, Trent Murray has more.
Prosecutors said they would probe whether a case of negligent murder or negligent bodily harm could be brought against Jürgen Föhler, the elected leader for the region, for his district's failure to pass on evacuation orders to residents in the path of the deadly flooding. The disaster has raised questions about the effectiveness of Germany's flood warning system, with Angela Merkel saying an SMS-based system may be needed in the future.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the concerns of one official in Oklahoma, an American state dragging its feet over COVID-19 vaccinations and now experiencing a major spike in Delta variant infections as a result. Dr. Dale Bratzler is the University of Oklahoma's chief COVID officer. It's his job to prepare the university for a safe reopening in the autumn. But on Thursday, he told reporters that he now fears there are too many doctors in the state who are complicit in persuading its residents not to get vaccinated. He says in the last few weeks he has heard from a growing number of Oklahomans who say they won't get the jab because their own GP told them not to.
There are very, very few medical contraindications to the COVID vaccine. Way too many people are being told that they can't take the vaccine, and that's simply not the case. I've had people contact me and say I'm allergic to an antibiotic, so my doctor told me I can't get the vaccine. That's not true. There are no antibiotic cross-reactivities with the current vaccine.
He says there are only two reasons medically not to get jabbed: a big allergic reaction to a first dose of the vaccine or a known allergy to one of the components in the jabs. Meanwhile, Oklahoma's hospitals are filling up and officials fear the state is rapidly running out of intensive care unit beds. The main news again: more than 50% of Americans are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19, 8 months after the vaccination rollout began. The US economy added nearly 1 million new jobs in July. Welcome news for the White House. But in Afghanistan, the Taliban have, for the first time since the US troop withdrawal began, captured control of a provincial capital. There's more from us on Twitter @Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
In a deal policymakers have hailed as a decisive step towards combating the rapidly escalating national debt, the United States settled 0.02 millionth of a percent of its debt to China this week with a single autographed photograph of John Hamm. The sale of the glossy signed headshot of the acclaimed actor, which China reportedly accepted for a financial easement of approximately $150 out of America's estimated $1.3 trillion in obligations, concludes a 6-month negotiation between the two parties.
The decision was obviously not an easy one, but without question, this was the right choice for our nation's future.
And in this week's science news, a distant planet is terrified that it might be able to someday support human life. In other news, a live cow is lowered onto the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. The majority of an office's supplies are used to apply for different jobs, and a lapsed cult member only attends sanctum on major bloodletting holidays.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
Hour number 3 of the Friday night edition of Free Talk Live is now underway. The telephone number is 603-283-6160. Again, 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the Reverend Captain Kickass. Joining me,
it's Bonnie.
And Chris.
We've been talking a lot about a whole lot of stuff, but, we're a call-in show, so we should probably go to the calls. Let's go to El Conejo, who's calling from FEMA Region 19. El Conejo, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, guys. I wanted to illustrate one of the major, probably the main statistical trick that the MSN is using to promote vaccines.
That would be the mainstream media for our folks who are acronym deficient.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
It's the difference between relative risk reduction and absolute risk reduction.
Ooh.
And I'll illustrate it with a little story.
Okay.
So I went to a small town in Mexico with a population of 1 million, and I found a little vendor who was selling magical tiger stones. And if you carry one of these magical tiger stones in your pocket, it reduces your tiger attacks. 1 year, they had 2 in 1 million tiger attacks. And after people started carrying these magical stones in their pocket, they had 1 in 1 million tiger attacks. Now, if you divide 2 in 1 million by 1 in 1 million, you have a 100% reduction in tiger attacks year over year.
Right.
Now, that is relative risk reduction. If you actually divide the numbers to find out your actual real survivability improvement, it's 0.000005%. Statistically insignificant. The tiger stones don't work. So if you go to Odyssey and you look up Dr. Richard Fleming, he will go through the emergency use authorization applications for Pfizer, Moderna, and all the others, and he will break those numbers down. Now, the vaccines are touted as being 95% effective. What they're not telling you is that is relative risk reduction, and they're gaslighting online saying the RRR is so important, it's so good. The fact is, the actual risk reduction after on a 12-week trial of Pfizer is about 1%. A 24-week trial period, and this is in their own emergency use authorization application, is statistically insignificant. 24 weeks into it. So these vaccines are worthless, and that's why they're talking about a third dose. So go to Odyssey and look up Dr. Richard Fleming and type in on Odyssey absolute versus relative risk reduction, and then watch his further talk, which is much longer. That one's about 7 minutes or something, but it's part of a much longer series that breaks down everything else that's wrong with what they're doing.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that this is the sort of manipulation that's going on, because you're right. Most people, like even I, when you brought up the difference between these two, I didn't know. Like, I couldn't explain it to another human being. You've explained it to me now, and so I get it, but I don't know still that I could regurgitate what you've explained between the two. So thank you for that.
Why don't you repeat that one more time for us? Relative versus...
Relative risk reduction versus absolute risk reduction. Look it up on Odyssey because it's censored on YouTube. Dr. Richard Fleming with 1M is censored on YouTube, and Google and all the other techno-fascists, the big data fascists. If you go on Odyssey, you can find him and his breakdown. It's and the tiger allegory is my own, but it's kind of an old wives' tale.
Well, you've been committed to the digital domain now, El Conejo, so you will live on in the archives. Any final thoughts?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for the call. It doesn't surprise me that folks are manipulating numbers to make people feel or think a certain way. We know from just even like market research, right? If you've ever worked in marketing or sales, or you kind of have an idea what market research is. People do not react to facts and evidence. Sadly, it's a sad state for human beings. But once you know this, it gives you, a better perspective on human beings. What human beings do react to is feelings. They have to feel a way. So scared of the virus. Yes. Or there was a time I worked for a furniture company as a salesperson, and all of the sales coaching I received was, first of all, always talk to the female, because people come in as a couple, right? But the idea is that the female holds the purse strings, and if you get her to say yes, the guy's just going to go along with it, right? So you get her to bust out the wallet.
And I don't think it works the opposite way if you're a female show person or salesperson. If you start talking to my boyfriend and not me, I might be a little annoyed with you.
Right. And then the other thing is they teach you how to make a person feel. Right? They need to feel comfortable sitting in this thing. So you try and get them to sit in it and imagine it in their living room and how they would feel having it in their living room. And would it match? And would other people, give them accolades for buying this piece of furniture, et cetera, and so on. Right? So now you take that and then you use it, instead of for good, use it for evil, right? Apply it to how government is selling you these things. And what they want, of course, is for you to feel. What do they want you to feel? Fear. Right? It's the overriding sales tactic, if you will, that governments use. They have to create something for you to be afraid of so that they can act as if they are the savior.
That's why it's just ridiculous to just regurgitate, the government's, or maybe not the government, but the CDC's numbers that come out about this stuff. I immediately, my brain just gets numb when I hear somebody start dropping numbers from the CDC. I'm just like, that they will manipulate things or just straight up lie to us because they're literally trying to get us to take this vaccine. So why are you acting like that's some kind of proof? Somebody put a CDC graph talking about how safe the vaccine was on their Instagram story recently, and I was like, I know a nurse who said that there's a crazy abnormal amount of people in we know a nurse, she's on the show and she talked about it on the show. There's a crazy abnormal amount of people in her hospital for blood clots right now, and way smaller amount of people in the hospital for COVID right now. So it's just not, there's just no way that the CDC has this information.
Wasn't there blood clots as a result of COVID too?
There were some, that was one of the things that they were concerned about happening to people who've gotten one of the vaccines. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah, but I thought that was a result of
this has been
of getting COVID as well. So.
But this has been since June, she said. All of a sudden in June.
Well, is that because more people got COVID vaccines because the vaccine might still be you're still getting infected. Well,
it's a great question. I don't know.
It's not supposed to actually affect you. It's supposed to be like give you something for your the
I would need to look at the facts and evidence to know the answer to your question, but most people will hear that and go, oh, right? They will immediately feel fear, which just plays into the hands of the tyrants.
Yeah.
So, hospitals too, like people will freak out about the number of I've heard this statistic touted by people who support mandates for the vaccines. Where it's oh my gosh, the hospitals are full again. Well, okay. Hospitals are businesses, and they are designed specifically to operate at a specific capacity, right? Hospitals don't just sit there with empty beds most of the time. If they did, that would be a very poor business model.
Yeah, they don't have huge
That
wings.
would be like, a car lot only half full of cars, right? A sales lot for selling used cars, only half full of cars. You don't let that space go to waste. You want to fill that space, right? Or you go and you find yourself a smaller car, or you build a smaller car lot if that's all the cars you're going to have. So hospitals aren't built to have empty beds just sitting there waiting around. Because otherwise it would be a waste of space, a waste of resources. It takes electricity and maintenance, et cetera, and so on. People, so they want to operate at close to maximum capacity with enough capacity, if something should happen. And then, of course, they have all these like Plan B and Plan C to turn different areas into like triage or additional rooms and stuff like that should it become necessary. So just because a hospital is, oh my gosh, it's almost close to full, doesn't mean that like you should be afraid.
Just a scared phrase.
More Free Talk Live is coming up.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
Welcome back, everybody. It is Free Talk Live. We're the live radio call-in program where you can take control of the airwaves, call in, talk about whatever is on your mind. The telephone number you need is 603-283-6160. Again, 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
It's never too early. I feel like Forkfest just happened, although it's August now, so it's been a month.
Are we going to another Forkfest?
I'm going to another Forkfest.
Is it time, Bonnie?
Not yet. Next year.
Well, it's happening. It's happening in 2022. So unofficially, it's happening from June 27th through July 3rd, again at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. If you haven't been, Forkfest is decentralized, which means that no one is in charge, and there's no tickets to buy. You just reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground from June 27th through July 3rd, and you're in. You can have whatever event you want to have, whatever event you want others to have. Forkfest is your event. You can make something out of it. You create the experience that you want others to enjoy. You can find out more about it and join the unofficial Telegram chat at forkfest.party. Come enjoy the festival, forkfest.party. It's happening in June 27th through July 3rd, 2022. So, all right. It is Free Talk Live. Let's go to the phones. We've got Dave in New Hampshire. Mr. Ridley, you are on Free Talk Live.
Hey, folks. I've been outed. Well, I have an update.
I'm sorry, Dave.
regarding...
I just want to cut you out. I only say that because I know you have the Ridley Report, and for folks to find you, I want them to be able to find you. So.
Oh, thanks. No, you don't have to explain yourself. A minute spent explaining yourself is a minute you never get back. But anyway, I wanted to update you on the case of Rochelle Kelly, the liberty activist in New Hampshire who stood up to the Concord police and was arrested for it. She was trying to she wanted her kids to be able to play on a playground.
You mean like 8 months later she was arrested? That one?
Yeah.
Wait.
The Concord police objected to her having her kids play on the playground, the public playground, and because reasons. And so when she stood up to them, 8 months later, they came for her.
8 months? I didn't know that. I thought it was like weeks or maybe a week.
No, it was some insane amount of time.
It was a long time, but wasn't this like sort of, during the lockdown?
Yeah, I don't know if it was 8 months, but it was months.
Well, the crazy thing about that is they dropped they're refunding the fines. Are they going to refund? Are they going to try her and then refund her fine when they find her guilty?
I think they'll probably drop it or something along those lines. But it was interesting to see. Anyway, the important thing that I wanted to get to is that her trial, or at least some major court event for her on this case, is August 11th, and I did want to make sure people knew that that's when it was happening, if they're in a position to either go there or spread the word about it.
Do we know if, assumably this trial is open to the public, do we know if the government for this particular trial is going to allow in-person visits, if you will, for people to partake, or will it be conducted over Zoom as we've seen with the Crypto 6?
I got the impression you could go in person. I don't remember if I'm maybe getting this confused with a different hearing, though.
Okay.
So there's details posted about it on forum.shiresociety.com.
Nice.
Again, forum.shiresociety.com, and that you can learn more there.
So I'm gonna try and make that actually to film it, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but I think they are letting people in from the public, assuming you're at least willing to wear a mask. But that'll be interesting because what happens if she refuses to wear a mask?
Right.
Yeah, there was also an interesting quote from the police that sort of is insightful. It provides insight as to what was going on in their minds when they arrested her. Or when they decided to arrest her. They said on WMUR, quote, "Personally, I think it's saddening to see how so they're talking about somebody else here, a different person who was arrested in the same situation." So I'm gonna set that quote aside because I'm not sure if it applied to Rochelle Kelly.
Okay, all right. So when is the date again? When's it happening?
August 11th.
That's August 11th.
Okay.
9 a.m.
The trial. It says it is a trial. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's in Concord at Concord District Court.
Okay.
So I intend to carpool with anybody who would like to come.
Are you going to wear a mask if they force that?
I am probably going to. The reason I will be going is to film the trial, and I will film presumably. If I don't wear the mask, I presume they're not going to let me in. So I don't know yet what I'm going to do, but we're going to see. We're going to go. We're going to film, hopefully. And
I think somebody should go in if they say we have to wear a mask. Because I know me and Ian are going to go, and Ian is not going to wear a mask.
That's interesting.
He got permission.
Interesting. Nice. That's going to be interesting. I don't know. If she doesn't wear a mask and they don't let her in, then there may not really be a trial, or are they going to put the trial on without her?
Or will she just get contempt of court and
right? Even though she was there and they refused her entry. I don't know. It'll be either way. I'm going to be there. So,
Dave, anything else folks need to know about this Rochelle Kelly trial?
That's all I can think of.
All right. Do you know when Bitcoin Gandhi might be making another appearance? I really enjoyed seeing Bitcoin Gandhi team up with Mr. Bitcoin recently, and so I just wanted to ask if you have anything anything about Bitcoin Gandhi.
Oh, thank you for caring one way or another. Glad someone's watching after all this deplatforming. But actually, I just uploaded 3 videos today from that event. This stuff you hadn't seen before. But if you see, I have there's this video I uploaded today of me inviting a Federal Reserve worker to defect.
Nice. And where can folks find that video?
That's at RidleyReport.com.
Awesome. All right, Dave, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. That's Dave in New Hampshire, everybody.
He's the man.
The leading activist. He's been doing it longer than anybody.
And he certainly has, my respect. He puts art into it. He does it in such a way that is, I don't know. It appeals to a whole bunch of different people in different ways. And, certainly there are people that I've talked to in this community that credit him for having moved here and that kind of a thing, and his activism, as a way of getting, I moved here because of Dave Ridley. So,
yeah,
kind of a thing.
He's brought a lot of people to New Hampshire, and I think you can credit with him. I mean, it's funny. A lot of people credit Ian, but honestly, Ian is I don't know if Ian is here because of Dave, but he was one of the early people that moved, and that's how comic attracted people like Ian and others. Yeah. So,
if you are an advocate for freedom and you believe in the non-aggression principle and you want to gather with other freedom-minded individuals, I cannot recommend enough the move to New Hampshire if you're able to pull it off.
Bitcoin's at 43,000.
Woohoo!
Yay!
More Free Talk Live coming up.
Karl Wattner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Karl Wattner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Karl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. More than 50% of Americans are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The threshold was passed earlier today, 8 months after the country's vaccination rollout began. But on a day that saw more than 100,000 new cases of COVID-19 for the first time since February and 439 deaths. At the White House, President Biden repeated his plea to America's vaccine refuseniks to get the jab.
Today, about 400 people will die because of the Delta variant in this country. A tragedy, because virtually all of these deaths were preventable if people had gotten vaccinated.
And the president was also talking today about another bit of news. The U.S. economy added nearly 1 million new jobs in July. Welcome news for the White House. From FSN's Washington Bureau, Caroline Malone reports.
It brings the overall unemployment rate down 0.5% to 5.4%. President Biden touted his administration's policies for the positive trend.
Economic growth is the fastest in 40 years. Jobs are up. The unemployment rate is the lowest since the pandemic hit. Black unemployment is down as well because we put in place the necessary tools early in my presidency.
The growth of jobs in July was largely due to the leisure and hospitality sectors, restaurants and bars, hotels and entertainment groups adding nearly half of all new jobs. During the worst of the coronavirus pandemic last year, the unemployment rate reached 14.8%, and there's a way to go before employment reaches pre-pandemic levels again. Caroline Malone in Washington.
In Afghanistan, the Taliban have, for the first time since the US troop withdrawal began, captured a provincial capital. The city of Zaranj in Nimroz province is now reportedly under Taliban control, with battles raging for other provincial capitals as well. Deborah Lyons is the UN's special envoy on Afghanistan.
The impression I have now is of a population waiting apprehensively for a dark shadow to pass over the bright futures they once imagined.
German prosecutors have opened an investigation into last month's deadly flooding that left almost 200 people dead. The probe will look at why warnings from the German Weather Service were not properly passed on to residents. From FSN's bureau in Berlin, Trent Murray has more.
Prosecutors said they would probe whether a case of negligent murder or negligent bodily harm could be brought against Jürgen Foehler, the elected leader for the region, for his district's failure to pass on evacuation orders to residents in the path of the deadly flooding. The disaster has raised questions about the effectiveness of Germany's flood warning system, with Angela Merkel saying an SMS-based system may be needed in the future.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
The telephone number is 603-283-6160. Again, 603-283-6160. And this is Free Talk Live. What is Free Talk Live, you might ask? It is a live call-in radio talk program that generally has hosts and co-hosts who speak from the perspective of freedom. That's liberty, Some call us libertarians, some call us anarchists, some call us, all sorts of other names that you can't say on the radio. But typically, the perspective of freedom, and particularly those who subscribe to the non-aggression principle. In the studio tonight, it's myself, the captain.
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
So we talk a lot about technology here on Free Talk Live.
We really do.
And we know already that the government itself has recently admitted that it was telling Facebook which posts to take down. But this struck me. This is from Reason.com. And this says, big tech, watchdog groups, and law enforcement all join forces to purge extremists.
This sounds like an unconstitutional violation of free speech rights, because ultimately the government can only go after you. There's court rulings, like Supreme Court rulings, that say something to the effect of the government can only go after you after something is published, and they cannot look at something and tell you that you can't publish it prior to publishing, basically.
Yeah, it sounds that way to me too, and also just as an advocate for free speech, I don't like being censored at all.
Yeah, me either.
One of the most difficult things for me to do is this show without cussing.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It is. Sadly, I've spent enough time in like call centers, right, as a tech support person, where I've learned to turn the filter on, because you can't cuss when you're in a call center talking to a customer trying to give them some software support.
I'm like that because of parents. I was always like the one like, don't worry, I'm really good with parents.
Yeah, I this doesn't relate to anything, but I've had the privilege of teaching grandmothers who've never touched a computer before what a left click and a right click is, because they just wanted to get on their AOL so they could send their photos to their grandkids on their tour across America in their RV or whatever it is, right? Yeah.
That's cool.
So, at any rate, big tech, watchdog groups, and law enforcement join forces to purge extremists. And the subtitle is, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube will expand their use of a central database that compiles extremist content for coordinated deplatforming. That's right. Wasn't bad enough that folks are getting canceled and that some of these, we'll call them social media apps, these giants are deplatforming people. Now they're going to get together and work together and choose who to deplatform and put it all in a central database.
Everybody just needs to get off Facebook. And people like to say, yeah, but everyone's on Facebook. Everyone won't be on Facebook if everyone leaves.
You know what's interesting is, does this not remind you of, was it the Red Scare?
Everyone's a communist.
Yeah,
yes, better dead than red.
And they had these lists where you couldn't do business with, and you couldn't hire somebody, and you
don't go to Bob's hardware store. He's a commie.
Yeah. It sounds very, very much like that.
Remember when you were wearing a shirt that said, "Wait, what did your shirt say that people kept calling you a communist for because they couldn't read?"
The sickle and the. What was the shirt?
Let's see. Just Steal It, I think, is the thing.
Just Steal It.
It's a red shirt, and it has a like some sort of communist manifesto.
It's like a Nike swoop instead of the hammer and sickle, and people were driving past us saying "commie" to Chris because they couldn't read or understand the joke.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah. So from the article, 2 recent tech stories, both appearing in Reuters, should make civil libertarians wary for the future. Social media sites and tech companies are partnering with watchdog groups and law enforcement to share information about so-called extremists using their platforms. PayPal, for instance, will work with the Anti-Defamation League to identify hate groups that use the platform to raise funds.
So you know what that means. It means more WikiLeaks style attacks, effectively.
If you recall that the company previously denied accused rioters facing charges relating to the January 6th Capitol events, this says attack, the ability to solicit donations for their defenses. I didn't know that, actually.
Wow.
PayPal.
Seriously?
PayPal, it denied accused. They weren't even convicted. They denied accused folks of participating in the January 6th the ability to solicit donations for their defense.
I've seen them do this with people who have been accused of copyright infringement too. But this is this disturbing thing. It doesn't end with just terrorism. It doesn't end with just copyright infringement. When you get arrested, you're going to also be in that same boat at some point.
It would seem that PayPal's plan is to facilitate even fewer of these transactions. This is potentially concerning since the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, defines hateful content in the broadest possible terms. Meanwhile, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and other sites will be expanding their use of a centralized database that compiles extremist content for the purposes of coordinated deplatforming.
And for people who don't think this should be a concern, Free Talk Live has already been attacked for the YouTube Free Talk Live YouTube channel. So it's already been attacked
and some others. I think Facebook too.
Right. Dave Ridley was attacked. He's been deplatformed. There's a lot of people who are just simply expressing freedom who have been deplatformed.
Get off these things and go to Odyssey.
Yeah, go to Odyssey.
Social.freetalklive.com.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. I was about to mention that you've usurped me yet again, you smart one. At present, the sites collude to take down, and this is from the article again. At present, these sites collude to take down content that promotes things like Islamic terrorism, ISIS, the Taliban, for instance. But in the future, it could be deployed against right-wing extremism as well. Well,
criticizing the government is sufficient to get you on this list already.
Yeah, and I just want to make it clear, we here at Free Talk Live, we are not right-wing, we are not left-wing, right? We just don't the bird at all. We have no reason to be a wing of said bird. I think the bird should be abolished, or at least I'm speaking in generalities, but for myself anyway.
And the crazy thing is, we're actually, the people who run this show advocate peace.
Yes.
We advocate against the use of violence.
Yes.
To achieve social and political objectives. So,
and in fact, we recognize, unlike a lot of people, that politics, aka government, is just violence. That's all that it is. It is coercion. That's all that it is. That's all that it can be. It is institutionalized violence. And I personally advocate for none of that. There's no reason to have an institution of violence, period.
There's a lot of things you can do, good things you can do in the world without using the state to achieve those positive social objectives, like set up a charity and collect money for housing the homeless, or
you can't
feeding
do that.
Starving people. Well, I know you can't because we got government, but yeah, and basically what Bonnie's referencing is something to the effect of governments frequently going after homeless shelters, preventing them from doing fundraising, preventing them from opening, homeless shelters in certain areas, and things of that nature, while at the same time, then basically sometimes taking money, stealing money from you and me as taxpayers and giving it to the homeless shelters.
So in both of the cases, this information, of course, collected may eventually be shared with law enforcement. We'll talk more about these big tech companies working together to deplatform you coming up.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, that's really the reason why I amp, is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. Are you a cryptocurrency advocate? The Crypto Tip is the ideal outreach tool to help new people discover cryptocurrency. It's a printable business card-sized tip that you can give to service providers, preferably in addition to a good cash tip. When the server scans the QR code, it'll bring up an explanation of cryptocurrency, how to install a wallet, and allow them to claim the tip. If they don't claim the crypto, you get your tip refunded to you after a time period you specify. Plus, if they do claim the tip, you get an email alert. Create as many tips as you want at cryptotip.org. That's cryptotip.org. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
Write some lyrics, put some lyrics over the musical interlude. Oh, we're live. Oh, my bad. I unmuted already. It is Free Talk Live. We're the live call-in radio talk program where you can take control of the airwaves. It is the final segment, though, so if you didn't call already, give us a call any other night between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern, because I won't be able to screen your call. But in the studio, it's myself, the captain.
It's Bonnie.
And Chris.
And before we go on talking about how big tech and law enforcement are coordinating a database to help facilitate deplatforming people, I want to say thank you to Bonnie Scarlett. I assume this isn't you, Bonnie.
No, I know who she is.
Is this an alias of yours, Bonnie?
Yeah, it's like you didn't do a very good job of creating an alias if you're using your own name. No, this is Bonnie Scarlett, who is a gold level amplifier of the show, Free Talk Live. What does that mean? Well, if you go over to amp.freetalklive.com, you can read all about the amplifier program. AMP stands for Advertise, Market, and Promote. And so Bonnie contributes some money. And this money specifically goes to getting this radio program onto more radio stations. We're on something like 185 or close to 200 stations. We could be on 250. We could be on 300 radio stations. It all is up to you. Please consider becoming an amplifier over at amp.freetalklive.com. If you like the content, if you like the show, if you've gotten some knowledge out of this, if you like the characters that we present, sometimes the guests who call, that kind of a stuff, then please consider becoming an amplifier. Thank you, Bonnie, for being a gold level contributor.
Thanks, Bonnie.
And that's coming from another Bonnie, so that's a meta thanks is what that is.
She's pretty cool. I know who she is.
You're just saying that because her name's Bonnie?
All Bonnies are cool.
No, they are not. Most of them are.
Well, the one in the studio here is cool.
Yes, and also the amplifier. So those two Bonnies for certain are cool. We've been talking about this article from Reason.com. Big tech, watchdog groups, and law enforcement join forces to purge extremists. And so, as the database expands, the risk of mistaken takedowns only increases, said Emma Lanzo, director of free expression at the Center for Democracy and Technology. In both of these cases, information may eventually be shared with law enforcement. As if, these tech companies getting together to, decide who's an extremist and who isn't. They should have no ability to decide that. I realize a lot of folks are going to be like, well, they're private companies and they can do whatever they want. Not if they're working with the government.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, that the government should not be partaking in any kind of censorship.
Not at all.
That's a very clear danger. They're not supposed to be doing that. And when you allow them to do that, well, then it becomes, the line gets very blurry on, who is doing the who's actually doing the censorship, right?
The government has become the actual conspiracy theorists. They're literally conspiring about their theory that they have a bunch of extremist Americans they need to go after.
And here's another thing, right? Just because you have the right to do something, right? Your corporation has the right to censor users on your platform, does not mean they should.
Yeah, it does. It certainly doesn't mean it's in your best interest as a business to do so.
Right. But there's also like a moral aspect of it, right? Like, just because something is not illegal doesn't mean it's not immoral.
Right. So the article continues, users of tech platforms obviously don't enjoy full free speech and due process protections since private corporations are not bound to follow the Constitution. We talked about that. But to the extent that federal authorities are encouraging these changes, more coordinated takedowns, the collection of data, and an overly broad definition of what counts as extremism, we have the right to speak out against government encroachment. And I mention it again, the government itself has said that they are telling Facebook which posts to take down.
Yeah, and again, I just want to point out that the Free Keen... Oh, wait, I'm sorry, it wasn't Free Talk Live. It was Free Keen YouTube channel was censored. But Free Keen is... people here, us, that's us basically, on this show, have basically been attacked by... presumably the government, days before the studio got raided.
Yeah.
YouTube censored us for violent. I think they said it was violent content, and it was an intro, a very old intro that basically is attached to every old YouTube video that was posted.
Oh yeah, it's something where there's something about. I think I know what you're talking about. It's like a audio of an arrest or something like that, or somebody trying to be arrested and then pushing back against it.
And that's the violent content I put in quotes because there wasn't really anything violent about it.
Right.
And this is the thing, like when that's exactly what they're talking about when they're talking about extremist content. They can turn anything into being violent if your political views effectively disagree with theirs.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's no need to remind everybody that the United States of America was founded by extremists.
That's true.
And I mean, what is an extremist anyway? Right? Like,
yeah, they were terrorists.
There used to be a whole marketing campaign where all of the products and services were jumping on board, right? There was Mountain Dew Extreme, right? All of these things were the extreme version of itself.
Right. Why, it's kind of crazy. It's like anybody who is anti-terrorist should be you should be asking them the question effectively is why do you not support America? Because America was founded by terrorists.
Yeah, well, and also America is the largest terrorist on planet Earth.
Right, that too.
Yeah. When the war on terror was beginning, right, when they first started using that terminology, the United States government had to sort of hem and haw about how they were going to present this, because every definition of terrorist or terrorism applies.
Yeah.
To government.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, this is a little off topic, but on topic. I was wondering why every time somebody says extreme, do I think of Disney XD? So I just had to Google it, and it stands for Disney Extreme Digital.
Yeah. I, as a fan of heavy metal music, I listen to extreme heavy metal. Why I just acquired the entire catalog of a band called Toxic Holocaust. And by most people's, listen, they'd be like, yep, that's extreme heavy metal.
The name is extreme.
And so, like, does that make me an extremist?
Yep.
Because I listen to extreme heavy metal.
Yeah, the crazy thing is a lot of the people who like to use that word extremist are themselves the extremists. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but it's like they're demanding like really extreme actions, like I don't know, like stealing from people, right? I mean, effectively, because that's what government does. They steal from people. So they're advocating violence to, achieve, I don't know, like COVID, lockdowns or whatever. Yeah. And it's like all of these are really extreme actions.
Yeah, you make a good point there, Chris, and that is to say the organizations known as governments, if you put them all together, because they're all the same, the only thing they do is extremism. Right? Yeah. And by extremism, I mean violence.
Right.
They're based on violence. They're based on coercion. They are engaged in theft. They steal. That's a form of extremism. Right? They steal from other people to fund their own programs.
The thing is, it's not that they steal. It's that they're the biggest. They're the biggest. They're the biggest in the room, right? Like there's nobody who steals more than they do, right?
Right. They are the largest thief. They are the largest murderer. They are most of the rapes occur under governments.
They're kidnappers.
Right? They're kidnappers.
Oh yeah.
And nobody is still behind bars after being kidnapped without having been proven guilty of anything.
The judge said that his detention is likely unlawful. Like the judge said that.
He's still deliberating.
He didn't say that it was unlawful, or it will be unlawful once I make this decision. He said the very initial detention was unlawful.
Yeah. And here we sit, of course, talking about, hey, let's end these extreme institutions that are violent, that are murderous, that are responsible for all the heinous things, the largest, most responsible in that respect, I'm sure my name's on a list as an extremist somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Every one of us.
Certain.
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely.
So I don't know. Extreme is using coercion and murder and theft and violence and kidnapping and imprisonment and torture to get your way. That's extreme. And that is what politicians do. That is what the institutions known as governments do. That's all they can do. They don't use any other method to get their way.
It's, what it is? It comes down to manipulation. That's what they're doing. They're trying to manipulate us.
In this case, they're just silencing people. I'd consider that extreme.
I also consider that extreme. We are out of time. Thanks for listening, everybody. We're here 7 days a week. You can find our archives at freetalklive.com. Thanks and peace.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind